It's lights out today on November 29th for the RLR podcast. We have another great line of topics for you guys today. I'm Matt, that's Nick, and before we get going, we'd like to say how ecstatic we are that Roman Grosjean is okay after today's crash. We will go over that in a little more detail later and when we pump the brakes, but again, we're more ecstatic to say that he is safe. He's in the hospital recovering, and he is still with us. And we wish him all the best and a speedy recovery. And our thoughts
Absolutely.
and prayers go to him. So, have to get it out of the way first. And with that out of the way, then not out of the way, but with that taken care of, first off, away we go into recharging from the previous 2 weeks. Sorry, folks, that we missed last week. We had some scheduling issues with Nick and myself with the holiday week or weekend, upcoming holiday, Thanksgiving in the States here. So we couldn't quite get it figured out. So that's what we missed last week. So we apologize for that. But with that, let's start off first with. What do you want to hit first? Let's hit Honda Civic.
Sure.
This show I think is going to be more of a Matt tells Nick about things and gets Nick's reaction. I
Yeah,
think, right?
I've been unfortunately very behind this week, and have not really had a chance to catch up. So this is definitely going to be the Matt tells Nick stories, Nick gives honest reaction podcast. So, uh, in true RLR podcast fashion, away we go. Explain this this Honda Civic.
These topics might also span, I think, the past 2 weeks because we had some stuff prepared for last week, obviously. So the new 2022 Honda Civic was prototype, I guess, was released. And I think it looks really cool. They're clearly trying to capture the new audience, new Gen Z buyers. It's got updated, more aggressive, more modern look. The interior is supposed to have a digital, display and wireless Apple CarPlay and all these updates, which we don't know yet. Of course, I think right now the exterior is visually accurate. We have to wait to see what the interior will look like. But I think it looks cool. Something that I might even, I would quote unquote buy if I had to or wanted to. Right? I think it looks really cool. It is the 11th generation Honda Civic, which given that the 10th generation for them has seen such success and obviously has big shoes to fill, right? But I think it looks really cool, and I think it will be a smash hit, assuming we see what the interior is. And I think it looks really cool. So that's my take on it. I think you have an interesting opinion though, don't you?
I have a differentiating opinion, in the sense that I think while it does look good, it looks very sporty. I also think that it is just a smaller Honda Accord. Um, to me, the front grille, the front design looks very, very 2020 Accord, and I really am failing to see where the great leaps and bounds in exterior wise only.
Mm-hmm.
I'm failing to see where the great leaps and bounds, and radical redesign this is. From a current Civic, yes. From a Honda Accord or the styling choices that they've had, even with the Honda Odyssey minivan, this kind of falls in line with what they've been
Yeah.
designing and doing for a while. So, at least to
I
me,
don't
that's
think it quite looks like an Accord. I don't agree with that point, but I guess we'll have to see about the interior, right? Like if that looks Accordish or Honda ish Accord, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? We'll have to see. I do think I don't think it looks like an Accord, frankly, but I guess I could kind of see the opinion. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with your opinion, which is fine. Difference of opinions. So we'll have to see as more details are released. I think it we'll see more when it comes out further to its sell date, which I think is what 2021 spring, late spring, something like that. So
I,
we'll
yeah, I
see
believe
what
that was
happens,
the
but
discuss date from the very, very brief uh, look that I got.
yeah. I mean, regardless about how you feel about it, though, and whether it's a smaller Accord or not,
It's
it
a
does have some
departure
pretty
from the
big.
current. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
departure
it's a
from a
departure from
current.
the current car, and it also has some pretty
Exactly.
big shoes to fill with the outgoing 10th generation of the Civic, and it's a great car. I mean, I think it always has been. It's a great selling car. I mean, one of our really good friends. I mean, we spent a lot of road trips in college going in his Honda, what 2018 something like that Honda Civic. I mean, it's a great car. I think for a lot of people, it's like even
His
their first
his
car.
is his is older than a, because we were we were in college in 2014 when he had it, so it's got to be a 2013
Oh
Civic.
man, wow! Wow, did we really that? I didn't think we were
Because
that
to
old.
what was it? The spring of 2015 was when
Maybe.
we stole the
I mean, but
keys and
that
went to the
car's still
movies together.
going for him too. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like those. I mean, Honda Civics. I mean, Honda Accords. I like they just keep going. I mean, I think they're good cars. You know, for
and he's
good.
lived on the East Coast. He's now living on the West Coast. He's lived in Chicago, and the car survived all three. So there,
Yep.
there's definitely Honda does keep their value. Honda is a
Hmm.
reliable brand,
Yeah.
and
This
the
new 11th generation's got some big shoes to fill. So
it
we'll see.
absolutely is walking in a very, very large shadow. I just don't. I think it's keeping up. This redesign is keeping up with the current Honda design trends. I don't
Hmm.
think it's anything necessarily groundbreaking on the exterior.
All right. I think we'll maybe update our opinions here when we see more,
Absolutely.
visually accurate in depictions of the interior. We'll see how that looks, right? So moving
Absolutely.
on, next, maybe another congratulations is in order for a Sir Lewis Hamilton. I believe he
Oh,
is
that's
going
weird to
to
hear.
be knighted.
Yes. So, from my understanding and us talking before the podcast here, um, and so Lewis Hamilton is expected to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, um, as if Lewis Hamilton needed anything else to boost his ego. Although, at the same
Yet
time,
another
I have to put my
platform for
foot in.
him to find his voice from.
Yes, I have to put my foot in my mouth because I did last podcast say that he did find his voice and that he's becoming more than just a driver. However, jumping straight from driver to sir former driver potentially would be a really interesting jump. But it is a
Yes.
congratulations to him. It will be very odd calling him Sir Lewis
We'll have
Hamilton.
to see how he wields the sword, the proverbial sword, right? We'll have to see how he throws around the weight of Sir. I gotta say, I know there were talks about it, and I didn't think it was actually gonna happen. But I mean, congratulations, all the more power to him. I mean, he 7-time world champion. I mean, he's getting it for all his success and his accomplishments in 2020, of which he has had a lot of notable ones. So I'm not gonna say. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not well deserved, but it's just not something I would have expected. To being totally honest. So, but
Yeah,
all the while, congratulations, Sir Lewis Hamilton, or soon to be. Not sure when it's gonna
soon to be.
happen, but
Right now, he's still just Lewis Hamilton. So,
yeah.
um,
You think they'll have to call him that, like on the podium?
if he's knighted, yes, that's kind of a legal. I don't
This
know
is
if it's a
gonna be
is it a legal
interesting.
requirement,
I have
but
absolutely no clue.
speaking of legal, I also heard there's another Hamilton story that involves some legal. That was
Yeah,
not a planned
so
segue, by the way. It just
and it
happened to.
was good nonetheless. So
Thank
we
you.
have as I call it, quote, Hamilton versus Hamilton. So for
The
those
trial of the
listening, Nick.
century.
So that's right, that's over, and only took 3 years. So
Oh,
Nick and I are big watch aficionados. We are passionate about watches for a number of reasons, and maybe another thing to talk about later on, the podcast as to why. You may remember we like Tag Heuer a lot, but one of the brands I like a lot as well that I got into because of a family connection is Hamilton watches. And a quick background on Hamilton watches: were originally a Swiss owned company, I believe, Swiss made watches, still are, but I believe they are American owned now. And I think they make great watches. They make a lot of weird watches though as well. You may recognize like the Men in Black watches that Will Smith wears. It's a triangular Hamilton that is a. I actually have a similar watch of those. It's called the Hamilton Elvis 80 Ventura, and they've been in the game since 1890s, 1892. So obviously for a long time, make great watches. I I think they're a respectable brand, right, across the industry. And that said, they've been doing it for quite a long time. So from my understanding, there was a court case where Lewis Hamilton, the driver, obviously, and a representative group headed by him, I think, essentially wanted to create trademarked Hamilton anything like a lot year in the EU for those who might not be familiar with this whole thing. and that's not unheard of, right? Like someone like other soccer players have their own brands, and I don't really watch soccer or football for those outside the U.S. and but it's not I'm seeing in his platform is huge, right? So the market for Hamilton branded stuff could be huge. But the court case took 3 years for them to come to this decision, apparently. I don't know why it wasn't a walk into the courtroom, 3-minute decision and walk out. But basically, he tried to trademark the name Hamilton, right? And I think the argument from the court was Hamilton's group and him didn't provide enough evidence why he should have the trademark Hamilton name, because Hamilton has been making the company has been making watches since 1892 and been doing it successfully under the quote unquote name Hamilton, when Hamilton is a very common name, especially in around the world in the EU. And Hamilton had been doing their thing since before Mr. Lewis Hamilton was even born. So that didn't potentially go his way or the group's way. And I don't know why it took 3 years. I think it should have taken 3 minutes or 5 minutes to kind of throw that out. But I thought that was a very weird
Eh,
thing I learned over the last week.
I'm not very big on EU law or how courts work outside of the United States. I'm not even 100% sure how courts work in the United States, and
I
that's
don't really
why.
think you can be. It's law. It's complicated and backwards and yeah,
And
yeah.
while we both went to a college that had a very prominent law school,
Well, at
need
one time at least.
at one time, we also did not go to said law school.
Nope.
But if you've watched anything from the YouTube channel Legal Eagle, which I know I've
Not
turned Matt
sponsored.
on to, not
Yes,
sponsored and
absolutely
not at
not
all.
sponsored. But it's a great. I mean,
Uh,
he's great. I think just I don't remember his name, but
Devin,
the way
Devin's uh, he's
the
fantastic
way
at
he's able
describing.
to
Yeah,
describe things to like your average person is awesome. Like I actually, when I understand it, I really like law and law, I guess lawyer stuff, right? I like the logic and I like the reason and I like the Latin and that kind of stuff, improving your point through evidence and things like that. And there's some really complicated concepts, even recently with the U.S. election law and stuff like that, with all the stuff that's going on here. Really, it has a way of breaking it down for a non-lawyer. He's really great.
yeah.
Really is.
He's got an extremely well put together channel that it's thorough yet easily digestible, and it's hard because there's a lot of lawyer friends that I have, a lot of lawyer friends of the family, and not very many can break things down the way he does. So good
It's
on
one
him.
thing to be
Yeah,
good at it, right? It's one
yeah,
thing to be really good at it and be a what's the word? To be a excellent at your craft, but it's a total another skill to be able to teach it to somebody else and even break it down on something even really complicated, to break that down enough, not just to teach it to fellow lawyers, but to be able to break down really difficult concepts to your average, intellect or understanding. And he just does a
absolutely.
really great job.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. We are, again, in no way
Again,
are we
not
sponsored or are we
sponsors.
associated with him. However, he does a
Yep.
fantastic job at doing that. So, going back to what I was saying, it, if you've watched any of his videos, you know that legal proceedings take a very long time.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
know you're probably joking a little bit when you say you don't understand how long,
Yeah, of course. I mean,
but but yes, I
I'm not surprised with the outcome either, though. I mean, like I said, Hamilton Watch Company. Hamilton has been making watches since before Mister Soon to be Sir has been born. And the one thing I will give credit to Lewis Hamilton for, a lot of the articles I was seeing come out about it made it seem like he was trying to take on this watch company and stop them from making watches. And from my understanding, it's not just him. It's an organization that he's in. It's a group that he's involved with, like attempting to go, I think, into the business of creating Hamilton branded stuff. And obviously, if you're going to make branded merchandise, you want to have a control over trademark brand. So, I mean, makes sense, right? But I
makes
think
complete
at
sense.
the end, I'm not surprised with the outcome. I don't know how he could have. won, frankly. And I'm a little partial to Hamilton Watch Company over Lewis Hamilton, so I'm happy too. But I thought it was weird. Something that I never expected to pop on my radar, and frankly, it did. So it was
Well,
it's kind of a recharge over the past, you know. I think most of that was even from like 2 weeks ago, so more like
right.
a 2 weeks ago recharge anyway. But
And
with
normally
that,
we would cover some other race results, but we're at the end of most of the seasons, and
mhm,
obviously with the race today in Bahrain, we're saving that for pump the brakes later. So,
yeah, we're
um,
definitely gonna
th-
pump the brakes on that and kind of go deeper into our today for maybe those who haven't. But we still have some chatting to do in the paddock here. So let's get into I think something maybe more racy related. Or maybe let's hit Tesla first, and then we can hop back into something racy, right? So like race related, not racy in
sure,
terms of
yeah, yeah,
you know
we're
what I mean.
yes, we're not trying to get
We're not
demonetized.
gonna tackle
So,
those kind of topics,
yeah,
but
and
a consumer. I saw something interesting. We both like electric cars, right? I don't know if I've said it here, but I will say that I am fully in support of electric cars. I love them, frankly. I love the idea of them, and I will absolutely, go electric or purchase an electric vehicle one day. And I think Nick and I have talked about this, and I told you this, Nick, that like I think I would want a Porsche Taycan. And that's oddly enough a little bit of a segue into a later part of paddock chat here. But Tesla, Taycan, Chevy Volt, whatever, right? Anything fully electric, I will fully dive in once I can get 400 quote unquote being in the U.S. 400 miles from one quote unquote charge or tank, you know, while my normal driving habits running on, running AC or heat, lights, everything, no problem without any, I don't know, I forgot what the term is, but battery worry or,
oh,
you know what I mean? Like, there's a term
range
for it.
anxiety.
Range anxiety, exactly.
Yeah,
And again, also assuming that the network of charging is there. I don't think we're there yet. I have full support that we will get there one day, 100%. And when that day comes, I will gladly purchase an electric vehicle. But until we get to that point, I will not be purchasing one. That said, Tesla has done marvelous things to kind of help transform the automotive industry and kind of set the stage, I think. And they make great cars, but I don't think Consumer Reports would agree with that statement. um,
there.
Consumer Reports
Yeah,
now no longer recommends the Model S or the Model Y based on reliability and quality. I think issues basically, right? I was telling you about this again beforehand, and I find that really interesting because I think it's kind of a big deal. Consumer Reports is a big deal in what they recommend or not, and based on quality, the air suspension in the Model S. I mean, heck, you got Model Ys that are having their glass roofs flying off while driving down highways. I mean,
which I find absolutely insane to think about.
there
Just
are videos of that happening, I think, on the interwebs. And I think Tesla, in the recent Consumer Reports release, their annual auto reliability survey, I'm reading in here, the Model S had problems with its air suspension and main computer and touchscreen controls. Model Y had body hardware and paint problems, and ranked the Consumer Reports in 20. I didn't even see this in 2015. Consumer Reports ranked the Model S as its top-rated vehicle ever, and now it's a total 180. I mean, yeah,
which is it's disappointing to hear, knowing where Tesla has come from,
mhm,
knowing
I
what
would
has
agree.
gone on with the company. No, I know personally people who have either interned or worked there on the engineering team. I don't.
I think it can be chalked up to it sounds like is them just not maintaining as they got bigger and needed to make more cars. The newer models are pushing out more. They're not focusing on the quality because like when you were buying a Tesla, it still is right, but was especially an expensive car. Not made in quote unquote, not mass produced. Even like back then, quote unquote. And it just seems like
Well, my first
I just find it
experience with Tesla
interesting.
was the Roadster. What do they call it? The Roadster S
I
or the
think
Roadster Sport. I mean,
it's not to say that their cars still aren't good. I would say that they still are. It's just interesting that their reliability seems to be going down, you know?
well,
So,
and again, I think a lot of that could be led to the whole mass production
yeah.
situation. I think a lot of the mass production lines that they are taking, Toyota did kind of have some points there. They have the recipe, but unless you've got the way to continue making that recipe over and over and over
Hmm.
again at high quality,
Maybe there is something to be said about the head boss at Toyota saying that they've got a good recipe, but they lack a chef.
well,
Maybe something to be said about it. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? Two
yeah,
weeks ago.
and people have discussed it before, and even I was just rewatching a video on the Model X today from Jeremy Clarkson. Uh, and even when they were doing some of the exterior views, you could see door panels and things were not lining up on that car. And that was
Hmm.
from a while ago on the Grand Tour. So it
Tesla, yeah,
just,
and I'm looking at the thing here in the 2021 Consumer Reports car brand ratings. Tesla is the second worst out of all the ones that they ranked. Interesting though is Lincoln, Ford's luxury brand, is down from where it was. I don't know. I think maybe from the last year, if I'm to believe this graphic, they're down 11 ranks, 11 from where they previously. They're the worst. Period. Bottom.
well,
And
and
another interesting jump up. I mean, this isn't Tesla, but Buick, 14-point jump to number 4 overall.
okay, well,
That's for reliability. That
to
is.
touch on those two brands real quick, I told you my experience driving the Lincoln, the Navigator, brand new
Mhm,
Navigator. Uh, and I was not impressed with the driving. Uh,
mhm.
Obviously, the rear
I
interior
think,
amenities were
and
fantastic,
this is,
but
I think, all around. It seems again reliability.
right,
Longevity of the
and
car, which would maybe make sense.
yeah, well, we're also out of the phase of Ford's Panther body, where we had
Hmm.
town cars, Mercury, Marquise, and
Hmm. Yep.
obviously the very either famous or infamous, depending on which side of politics you're on nowadays, Crown Victoria, which was also known as the Police Interceptor, and
Hmm.
the number one police car for any fleet for probably since from 1995 to 2013.
Potentially for some small towns in the U.S. current day.
Yeah, also current day. Most of them are out of service by now, at least.
Hopefully,
From the reports that I've seen, I think most of them are out of service. However, there are still some out there. Uh, in
because
fact,
they just won't. Much like Queen Elizabeth, and in the best of ways, they just keep on going, and they will forever.
well, and the parts were so readily available, and parts
Yeah.
are so readily available for them. But anyway, getting back to well, another point I did want to touch on really
I'm not
quick.
surprised by the Lincoln, but I kind of am surprised about the reliability jump for Buick
But
and
my
and,
but
and
my
Tesla as well. I
but my
mean,
grandparents have a new to them 2012 Buick LaCrosse, and I will say that car has held up immaculately.
well, it
Not to
certainly
mention
is
as a
interesting being in the
2012.
automotive world. I mean, I think you have to consider Tesla as obviously a major player, and
Absolutely.
with that becomes the same problems that every major player clearly experiences, right?
Right. I do have to say on Buick's part, 12 years old, that car has perfectly working radar cruise control, lane keep assist, and a multi-camera
Mhm.
system.
Honestly, to Buick's point as well, I recently test drove to help my parents looking at cars a new 2020 Buick Enclave, I think, and I was definitely not the car for me, I would say, but I was thoroughly surprised in a good way with what I expected to
Hmm.
find and the quality of that ride. It shocked me in a good way. So it's very interesting, but well, hopefully Tesla can kind of figure out what the heck's going wrong here and kind of bump up their liabilities. I'd
Yeah.
like to see them back at the top. I mean, where we expect them to be in,
Well,
with
for
how
the
much they've
yeah,
changed
with the price
price
point,
point and how much they're changing like the market trends with the dealership experience and how they're changing. Like you just get updates to your car like your software on your phone, right? Like I love those trends and changing the auto industry, and I'd hate to see them get plagued by. I mean, they're the I thought to me that they should be the atypical car company, and I don't want to see them have typical car company issues. So I
Right.
hope they can get all that figured out.
Agreed. Speaking of
So
electric cars, um,
do you
I'm
want to
re-
stay
I'm
with that?
I'm reading this headline and I'm very
You haven't seen this
confused.
video yet?
No, I have not.
So there's a video that's been going on for a while. This Porsche Taycan that's sitting in a driveway, and all of a brand new. I think picked up like 5 days from before
Oh, you
then.
know what? I
That video
did
where it
see this
drives off
video.
right, like drives like knocks like an SUV sideways, lands sideways on top of another one in the street.
Was that
And it's
driver
like,
error or was that an issue with
so
the
I've been
car?
reading into that. That's what I want to talk about and get your thoughts on. So, I mean, a moment, a half a second moment of silence. That brand new time. I mean, oh, terrible. What happened to it, right? But based on what I'm reading, I thought it was driver error and the guy being dumb with like control, like a lot of people. But the more I read about it, it seems like on that car there is a hold mode when the car senses a steep incline,
Oh,
like that
sure.
driveway, and it's really hard to get out of. So what it seems like is that the driver was trying to get out of hold mode, and it just clearly boom, you know. And it
Essentially
brings
launch
up,
controlled him straight off the side of his own driveway.
I don't even think it was his. Based on what I hear, like it was a guy visiting his or friend or something
Oh,
like that.
really?
I don't know the full
Okay.
story. I'll be wrong. I will freely admit that I'm wrong if proven to be so. If I'm not proven to be wrong, I'm 100% right.
That's a dangerous thing to say on a recorded podcast, but okay.
About this one particular top, nah, I'm not ever 100% right. So, but it seems logical, and it made me start thinking. Other parts in the article is issues with the Taycan and maybe even electric cars or other cars in general, but is the Taycan too much? It's what, 5,000 pounds. It's basically the weight of an SUV in the shape of like a long coupe. It's a huge car, so like it works in America and Germany and the size of our roadways, suburban roadways, and highways. But in the UK, clearly that car looks like it's the size of the house. I mean, it doesn't fit well there. It's too big, right? And it's got what, like the Turbo S model has like 750 horsepower, something like that. It's got like 0 to 60 in 2 point something seconds. It's a race car. I mean, it's well, you could argue that it's too much. You could argue that it's too much to control, or I think you could argue that they make it too easy to control that. And here's a good example of the power of that car and the weight and the size. And it's like, is it too much? You know, I hate to say that about a Porsche, about the Taycan that I love so much, but it really got me thinking. You know, is
See,
it's a race car. It's one thing, like race car drivers go, like F1 drivers go through karting and junior trials and like all this training and
it's
experience.
essentially a Formula E car.
Yeah, it's almost like they're taking, Porsche's taking potentially the keys to this race car and just saying, "Here, have fun, good luck." I mean, I don't often like to take this point of view, but
Yeah,
it
but
got me thinking.
that's okay. But okay, let's make the equivalency with not an electric car, but a Corvette C8 with a Z51 package.
Mm-hmm.
You've got someone who, let's say, has never had a sports car, a rear-wheel drive, high output sports car before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a bad comparison because the C8's mid-engine. Let's take a C7.
C701
Yeah, let's take a C7 ZR1.
has so much power, I can't even put it down.
Exactly. So you take that and give it to someone who essentially has never had that kind of power before. You take it and give it to someone who is used to driving, in a previous topic
A
here,
Honda Civic.
a Honda Civic.
That's I knew where you were going.
If we gave a ZR1 to our friend with the Civic, he would put
He'd
it in a
probably
ditch
fail,
faster than we could count
I mean,
to 10.
you hate to think about it, but to be honest, he'd probably end up crashing, and well, he'd probably I mean, heck, he probably would end up crashing into a wall, and I don't think he'd probably make it. I mean, yeah, it's not. It's
So
interesting. You have to rethink your idea of what is like. This article says rethink your idea. Written by I never think like I give the credit to it. So it was written by Raphael Orlov, and he said later in the article that rethink your idea what a safe car is. Another thing I've heard complaints about the Taycan though is the pedals, the brake and the accelerator pedals are very close together, and it's confusing and hard to discern for
and
maybe people
that's
who
something
aren't.
that Porsche will have to work out. However,
Yeah,
at the same
but
time,
it's
if
something to be said. I just find it an interesting take. It's like he said like this thing's like the weight of this thing is like a freaking like when it's out of control, it's like an out of control house. It's like an out of control rhinoceros, like and clearly you could see that power on display here for in a not so good example.
I
I've
mean,
never really thought about something like this before, but it got me thinking that
it does weigh as much as my Dodge
is
Durango.
it too
I will say
much?
that. So
And that's an SUV. It's a coupe. It's a sedan not a coupe. That is the weight of an SUV. I mean,
it it
I don't know.
is,
It's
and I'm
it's an
I'm not
interesting
saying.
point of view.
But then you could, I mean, you could go back and say the same thing about the Model X.
Yes, I mean, and this is not specific to. I
Well,
will
no, no, no.
argue it's not specific to the Taycan or electric cars, and it's just it
I
got me
understand
thinking.
that,
The
but
Taycan got me thinking about this. I don't think I subscribe to it 100%. I think it'll be in one and out the other by week, but it's an interesting thing that I'm sorry for this gentleman, this individual. I think it was a gentleman, but this individual who have ruined, I think, their brand new Taycan, essentially, $110,000 US dollar ish Taycan. And yeah, it just makes maybe what we're saying is, folks, if you are stepping up in your car game for the first time, please be careful. If you're gonna go get a race car, you're gonna go from a even like a Porsche Cayenne or coupe in this case, of course,
do do your
to
research, please.
to a GT3. Please do your research.
Do your
Please get
research, and
experience.
yes, I would say,
Go back to school,
well,
for driving. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
take
but
some classes,
and
learn how to drive the cars.
if you're looking at a performance vehicle, you know, try to find somewhere or someone who can let you
Find a Walmart
safely.
parking lot.
No, we can't encourage that. But that's, find an area where you could safely and legally put the car through some limits.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a go. Majority, when I'm testing or trying a vehicle out, I always ask to take it over to the local high school, because
Yep.
the parking lot is 2-tiered, and that second tier is on a really steep hill.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to put the car on the hill. It's actually where I learned how to start driving stick shift on hills. So I took my old car out there and sat there and learned over and just practiced over and over and
Lucky
over and
you.
over
My
again.
to learn driving stick shift on hills. My grandpa made me drive on highway roads and normal roads and said, "Figure it out. Don't hit the car behind you."
Well, and that was my biggest fear was, and
Oh,
honestly, I
it's
didn't
really
even think
scary.
about it, but my dad went to that high school, and he said, "Hey, why don't you just go over to this high school parking lot? You know the parking lot; it's super steep.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just go practice there?" And I'm not saying that everybody needs to go find a hill and practice driving on hills when they're buying
Yeah.
a new car. However,
What we're saying is, if you're gonna get a performance car, especially for the first, I mean, unless you're an experienced driver, just do your homework. Practice.
in something like the Taycan,
Don't
I
think of it like
almost
driving a Civic. If you're
exactly.
going from a Civic to a Taycan, I mean, it's not. It, you know,
And
if you can afford the car, excellent. Great on you. Buy them, buy them, buy them for again the Taycan. So Porsche keeps making them, and
absolutely.
by that time realize I think the undertaking that you're bumping up to. And it'll make you safer for everybody else on the road. Because remember, we share the roads. It's not just for us, right? You know, thank God when in this crash, I think there was nobody was hurt, but it was made a heck of a ruckus. The individual driving the Taycan had some bruises and bumps, but was otherwise I think unhurt. but remember, an automobile can cause damage, as we've learned today, pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
just be careful and please do your homework, ladies and gents.
Yes. And understand your car. I know it sounds silly, but read through the owner's manual.
Yep,
Understand the different things.
something my grandparents instilled in me.
It was very interesting because speaking of the hill assist and the hill start assist, I actually have that in my Durango, and it's an automatic all-wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been on steep hills before. In fact, I was on a steep hill in the Black Hills in South Dakota, and I realized when I went to go let off the gas, it gave itself some gas and held itself in place, or when I let off the brake, I should say,
It's kind of like a
it gave
pseudo hold
itself
mode.
just a little bit of gas and held the brake until I gave it more gas than what was just a small
That's
tap.
probably a very similar thing that happened with the hold mode or whatever happened. That
It's essentially the same thing.
yeah.
Understanding and reading through the Taycan spec sheets, it's a hill assist.
Mm-hmm.
So similar to the 911, excuse me, or any of the um, manual or paddle shifted vehicles, it's something to help the driver when they're on a hill not roll back until everything is fully engaged. And even in an automatic on a steep enough hill, torque converters, it's just pushing fluid from one side of the torque converter to the other.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes you just don't have enough torque at low RPM at a standing stop to be able to keep the car in place. So the car holds the brakes for a second until you actually get
Mm-hmm.
on the gas. If the hill assist or the whatever Porsche was calling it in this specific instance, if this hold mode was really the the issue, then I think Porsche needs to look at where the thresholds are and potentially
Yep.
like Tesla send out a software
I'm
update.
sure they will be.
But
So yeah, it's interesting, and yeah,
okay,
I'm glad that person's okay. I think okay as
yes.
well. But yeah,
Speaking
it's
of, and this is an intentional segue this time. Speaking of paddle shifters, I am very
wow.
confused as to why NASCAR is getting paddle shifters. I'm not confused. I understand why they're doing it, but
I
at the
mean,
same time,
they could potentially be getting a sequential gearbox as part of the 20 or the next generation NASCAR Cup car. That's another thing for paddock chat here would be something I saw a couple weeks ago is Martin Truex Jr. and who was the other driver? I was just talking to you about it today. I can't remember who the other driver. They were testing the next generation NASCAR. You know what? Whatever. And there's a lot of potential changes, and it seems that the feedback so far is very positive from what I was reading. Would you agree? That Nick, if it's positive generally.
yes, I would say that it's generally positive, and I mean, there is some good reason. I think from what you've told me, and we'll go through the points here in detail in a second, but it seems like they're kind of getting more on par with a lot of the other racing series out there, where
Yeah,
it's
I would agree.
getting
There's a
less.
lot of potential changes coming that make the car, well, I mean, like better. I mean, and it's the next gen car is supposed to be, right? I mean, that's the whole point. But like notable changes are larger wheels and brakes, which would be better for managing tire temperature and tire wear, contact surface, so better grip. A new rear independent suspension, I think, is what I was reading. Makes the car more nimble and more controllable. Apparently, it sounds cooler. It's a more throatier sound with the new engine, whatever it may be. Steering seems maybe some. I think there are some reports of the steering being soft and twitchy, but Bush was the other driver, and Bush and Truex didn't notice that. So obviously, there's a whole lot of new things. Even the teams and the pit crews will have to learn to, you know, make these cars track ready and to modify and tweak and spec these cars, obviously, right? But the biggest thing, most notable even is the gearing. There's a sequential shifter, not like the current H configuration that Truex said was a lot easier and more efficient and more effective. And apparently, it's awesome. Like when you lift on the throttle, it's a lot easier to shift. It'll be better for if they're bogged down in the infield in traffic. I mean, it seems like I think it's a good move. Something akin to paddle shifter or like a motorcycle gear shift is what Bush was comparing it to. So it seems like there's some very positive reports about the beginning test for the new next gen NASCAR
Well,
car.
one of the things that I always you think NASCAR and you think of the the pit stops. And the one thing that got me that
Mhm.
you were telling me about was the single lug wheels.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You now, you know, are they going to change pit crew requirements? Because instead of you going and zipping out the star pattern in the wheel,
Hmm.
is this
Now it's
now?
just
It's going to be a lot more like F1, and what's that going to do to pit times?
yeah. I mean, it's like I think like you said, it's becoming more like other racing series, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, NASCAR is in and of itself its own pinnacle of racing in a certain way, but I like seeing these changes and make not that NASCAR should be compared to other racing forms like F1, but it makes it seem like it's more comparable, frankly, you know, and maybe I don't know. Heck, these changes might even bring some new fans in from, given that the cars might be turning into more like what from other racing series and other racing organizations. You know, might bring some new fans
Yeah,
in that are used to
well,
this.
and it would open
So
it up to other drivers who are more used to a modern style
yeah,
racing
I think it's
chassis.
cool. Quick hit here, but I think I mean there's still a lot to be done. I think it's for the 2022 car, so we won't see it next year. But interesting. I mean, I've never really paid attention to it before until I think there's some stark differences, some big changes coming potentially down the way. So it's cool to watch. Kind of like the Honda Civic. We'll see what happens, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we've taken a lot of, I think a lot more time than we get here. I think it's time that we pump the brakes here a little bit and talk about the two things we want to go over more a little bit. One mainly, but we want to talk about this. I think first the F1 engine development freeze. Do you know anything about that before I fill in the individuals here listening?
Um, just the little bit that we've discussed, but go ahead and explain it, and then
Okay.
we can discuss that before we dive into
I will.
Bahrain.
I'll preface this with I could very well be wrong. Something brand new, literally as today. I was doing some work outside all day and got home kind of late, kind of like Nick. I was behind all week as well, so it's something I'm just new learning about. So I could very well be wrong, and if I am, I apologize. This is my opinion based on what I've read and my understanding of it. So essentially, we know that Honda is not continuing after the 2021 season, right? And the Red Bull's engine or power unit supplier. And previously, teams like Red Bull and Renault and Ferrari have not wanted a engine development hold or freeze or I forgot what the term was. I think I told it to you before here, Nick, but it's sounds like something that would be make the engines all more similar to each other, the power units, and essentially they're now calling for an engine development for because they want to use I think Honda's engine platform, power unit platform through to 2020 through 2021 and I think even to 2022 to give them time to develop another power unit. And it seems like Ferrari's in support now and Renault who previously wasn't in support for something like that is in support. And another thing is another argument made was something for I don't know if you can pull up the article here quick or any article quick, but they called it something. It started with a C, and it sounds like to me it would basically be something that all the F1 engines would have to kind of bring them more closely in line with each other, like a more fair quote unquote power unit. And Toto at Mercedes is not in support of that. It seems like some teams are, obviously, but he's not in support because what makes Mercedes great is their power unit, right? And their car, clearly. And I mean, everything, but their power unit's great. And Ferrari, well, this year they're not too great. I would argue that they traditionally had the best power unit on the field. So if they start implementing the engine freeze is one thing, start implementing these rules and whatever the technical term for what was in the articles that I've been reading, again, I can't remember. I don't think I want to see all the F1 engines platforms be the same. I like what's the point? Like I like seeing other teams develop these amazing engines, you know? Yeah, the Williams might not be anywhere near as good as the Mercedes, but I don't want to stifle Mercedes, in their or Ferrari or even Red Bull in making a fantastic power unit for the sake of fairness. That's my understanding of it. It's kind of twofold. I get why Red Bull's now where they previously haven't and other manufacturers are agreeing with the power unit freeze, essentially to give them, so they can use Hondas, continue to use Hondas, and I get that. But the other thing, I'm gonna see if I can't find an article here, maybe get your while you get your opinions here, Nick. But
Are you talking about
I don't
engine convergence?
maybe
That's what I'm seeing in a lot of these articles. Is
I think that was it. And to me, and yeah, I think that was me. I understand the engine. I could be wrong. I understand the engine convergence as assimilating engines, like making them more similar, essentially more the same. And I don't, if that is what it is, I don't like that part of it, and I don't agree with that.
yeah, I would have to say, from what I'm reading right now, literally pulled up on my second screen here, but
It says brand. I literally just started reading about it like today and yes, very quickly.
but
So
but reading about it and seeing that, it would kind of bring everything to the F2 or Formula Ford, Formula Lotus, which is since long gone, and some more the actual the Formula leagues where pretty much everything on the car is a spec unit.
mhm.
Um, I think it would make things interesting from a driver standpoint, but I also the
What's
ability
that?
to
I think
change
that
things and
department.
develop. The R&D departments of these teams are driving much more than just the cars. They're driving the road cars. They're driving change
Mhm.
in the industry. They're driving a lot more things forward. And
I didn't even
because
think about that, but yeah, I mean,
if you stifle their ability to build an engine, I mean, look at what Porsche did. Porsche had an F1 ready engine based off their
mhm.
DTM car and or their LMP series car, and it was good.
Yep.
And because of that, they knew how they needed to run the hybrid powertrain for some of their other cars. Take, for example, as well. I mean, look at Honda and Honda's hybrid tech that they've been testing in the Red Bull cars. I mean, that's all
Mhm.
been engineered and designed by Honda. And while they've definitely had some issues this F1 season, it's driven a lot of change and a lot of things coming down the road for Honda. Same
Yep.
with, you know, Ferrari has struggled a lot this year, and maybe that's why we haven't seen so many hybrid Ferraris. But and
They'll get back to making bad road cars, and then they'll have a great F again.
yeah, and I should note, while Matt and I have talked about Ferrari in the past, and feel free to go back and listen to our stance on Ferrari as a company, they do make gorgeous cars.
Yeah,
They just
100%.
a lot of them don't work most of the time. Um,
It's interesting, like this whole thing. I could have this totally wrong, and I hope I don't. But this is what my mind is. This is how I understand the current thing, and I'm sure, much like driver talks, and if Hamilton will be on the grid next year or not. I mean, it'll develop over time. It's just I hope it doesn't. There is a need to make the teams more even, but I don't want to stifle you know the things that make F1
I don't want to stifle the innovation.
great. Yeah, like the
Yeah,
innovation is a huge part, like you said, that isn't just about in F1, F2, or any racing series at all. Like I think I often forget that a lot of the stuff we see in racing, like in F1, is it trickles down into the consumer car market. You know, like what for example, anti-lock brakes. I think is a good example. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's going to be a lot. Over the next what like through I think the current engine platform, the current V6s are slated through 2026, I believe.
I
So
believe
they're
it's 2026, but 2022 they're supposed to be introducing the E10, using E10 as fuel. I mean, that's
yeah. So I think with all those, I think one through it's to give them time to develop more, you know, new technology to because the emission standards will be a lot more strict after 2026. But to their point, like I get why Red Bull's asking for this, and I get the point. Is that as one side of the coin? The other side of the coin, I don't want like engines to become the same because F1 will get boring. Maybe it won't get boring. I think
no,
we'll see
but
more on track rivalry, but what trickles out of F1 might be more boring, and I don't want to see that
well, and
either.
it's
So
part of
it's
the reason
interesting.
why it was so fun to see Seb get a podium is he
Mm-hmm.
had the worst car on the grid.
Yep.
Williams
Well,
is
Williams
Williams.
cars.
Okay, we'll
Sorry, Williams, but
yeah, we'll give Williams a pass here. But as far as fall from grace from a manufacturer that's on that grid, Ferrari has had a disaster of a year this year.
mm-hmm.
And that
Yep.
SP1000 is a garbage platform. But that's my personal opinion. And I think their
Yeah,
point standing this year and compared to last
that's a good
year
point.
should be a note there. So
Well, with that, you want to hit Ferrari heading to today's F1 race? I mean, it was interesting to say the least.
yeah,
Maybe we work our way from the finish backwards, considering the most notable stuff happens in the first 1 to 3 laps.
let, let's let's quickly go through the highlight reel and then we'll work our way backwards because I think we're going to spend the most time talking about the
Well,
first thing that happened. But
there was starting from the beginning, someone became a pancake and got flipped over. Someone had a little bit of a, shall we, in a joking sense, a hot flash.
uh,
I mean, just a little bit. And the race ended in safety car. Like just like the race end was boring because what brought that final safety call out?
it was
I
the
can't
track.
remember.
We'll go over it, but it was the track marshal who ran out in front of Lando's car.
Oh, that's right. Jesus.
Yeah. So we'll touch
Well, I
on that.
mean,
So
I will say
starting,
for the listeners, I missed the first 10 laps because I was not at home, or in a place I could watch it, and then I
missed the
watched it
most
later.
exciting part of the race.
Exactly right. This is my luck, and so within not even through the first lap, and so what? So okay,
Well, okay. Let's do your idea. Let's start
how
at
did
the
we
end and
even?
yeah, let's
Yeah,
start
I
at the
think
end and
like
work our way
let's
backwards
start
here.
with the easy and go to the hard.
So
start backwards.
the first thing I want to make note is on Sunday mornings here in the States, when the F1 race is on, I have a tradition where I go over to my grandpa's. We watch the race. I get breakfast, home cooked breakfast, and it makes me a very happy
Mine
boy.
is much less interesting. I just make myself some coffee, maybe make a bagel. I turn on the race. So
Now, where I was going with that is Matt and I text each other pretty consistently on Sunday mornings about things that are
Mhm.
going on with the race and things that we want
Yep.
to talk about on the podcast. Now, I didn't realize that Matt was doing hard physical labor this morning, and I just
I was doing yard
remember
work.
texting
Help.
him 10 minutes into the race and going, "Hey, are you watching this and or seeing this? And also my recording time is about to run out because not only did we start slightly late, but we also have had a hour and a half red flag." So that started the conversations today. But going back to the end of the race, the race today
Mhm.
finished under caution, under
Yep.
a safety car.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
So
And it shouldn't have. I mean, it frankly shouldn't have. I mean,
it
who Who
It
runs across a track in the middle of
it
an
should have
active race?
been a sector flag, if anything, so that there was more
Yeah.
time. However,
Not like it would have changed the outcome though, regardless, right? I mean,
well, but here's the thing:
well,
if that fire had happened 2 laps
yeah,
earlier and they would have
but it
restarted,
didn't.
I understand it didn't. But what I'm saying, why this is genuinely interesting to me, is if this had happened 2 laps before, Lewis was on old tires, Max would have been bunched up right behind him on fresh tires and a softer tire compound, which if you listen to the last episode, we discussed the tire
Yep.
compounds.
So in theory, I see where you're going. I didn't think that far, but yeah, it
If
isn't how it happened. So
it's not how it happened, I understand that.
yeah,
But what I'm saying
unfortunately.
is that's why that became exciting.
Yep. Oh, for sure. Again makes me wish I watched it live, but of course I had to do some. I was helping,
Oh,
helping
we
my
should
man out this morning.
we should mention why the race finished under a safety car, and that is because unfortunately Sergio Perez's car caught fire.
Yeah,
They believe it was a turbo blowout. He was coming around turn 4, and he started seeing white smoke. And by the time he got to the last turn into
it looked
the final
like
straight,
pink fire.
yeah, it was pretty bad. It was definitely oil burning, which would lead to.
I don't know. It looked pink to me, which I thought was kind of cool given Racing Point colors. But like, not the fire wasn't cool, but the fact that the fire looked pink to me was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's usually an indication of a smoke fire, or I'm sorry, not a smoke fire, an oil fire,
Yeah.
which would lead me to believe that it was a turbo that blew.
But the fact that happened in what the lap is, I think it was last lap, right?
No. This was under.
Oh no, it was the third to last lap, I think. Actually, that happened.
I actually believe it was it was within the last 5 laps, which is why they were concerned if the race restarted. Mercedes was on old tires with Lewis, and he didn't pit under safety car.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate because that would have been another
that would have been
back-to-back podium for him.
That would have been back-to-back and a very, very strong podium.
Yep.
And
then
Sergio.
Therefore, he had to obviously retire in a, shall we say, a blaze of not glory. And then Alex Albon of Red Bull took his spot, and Red Bull rounded out the, behind Hamilton, the podium finishers. So, I mean, well done to them. Congratulations. Nice to see. I mean, no matter how he got there, it was nice. Alex was solidly, I think, in fourth for a lot of the race. So it was kind of, I still like seeing him up there. He's had a hard go at it, and his future remains I think still unsecure at Red Bull for next year.
Well, and as Christian Horner has said over and over again, it's his spot to lose now. So him coming in with a podium today,
he performed well today, regardless had he finished P3 or P4. But moving backwards, we had a little bit of a morning pancake flippage. I mean,
yeah. Well, so we're going. Well, hold on, because I want to talk in between we get to that point. Real quick.
Oh, I thought you wanted to hit the highlight.
Well, I was going to say we would hit the highlights moving forward and then move backwards, but you kind of hit the highlights. So what I wanted to mention in the middle of
there's so many emotions going through my head right now.
There's so much, and this race was literally the definition of an emotional roller coaster. But again, we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Middle of the race, I just wanted to say it was very clear to me, and Matt has not seen this footage yet, that Charles Leclerc cannot handle his emotions when he gets passed.
I can't find that footage.
We'll have to go back and go through it. But he sabotaged himself when I want to say that it was it Carlos Sainz that passed him? No, it was. I believe it was either Ricardo or Esteban Ocon. It was one of the Renaults. I believe it was one of the Renaults that passed him, and he very quickly got angry and and understandable, but he started driving like an idiot. And and I haven't read any statement from him if he's talked about it, but even Seb got on the team radio and went, "What is he doing?" Like at this point, what? But he swung out wide, tried to block the other car that was getting ready to pass him on DRS, got in the way of the DRS car, and in the process opened up the inside of the turn to two more people to pass him, all because he was angry about one person was trying to go back after him. And it almost got to the point where I thought he was going to try to pull like a whole pit maneuver and wipe someone out. He was visibly frustrated. And
well, I mean, but you were telling me that based on what the race officials were saying, the race director was saying before the race, given that the track is narrow and the precautions the drivers had to take and, allow space and be careful, sounds like he didn't exactly do that. And then he pissed.
There were a couple people who did not give space today. Before,
definitely.
And this is a good segue into our pancake moment. And pancake's a bad word. The car wasn't flattened; it was just flipped over.
I say pancake like a spatula flips a pancake, not like pancake as flat.
Yeah. So the car was not flattened.
Said a different way. I think the F1 Instagram account said it maybe even better. And hang on, I gotta find it. They said, and I quote, "Lance Stroll's world turns upside down."
Yeah, which is yeah, it did. But part of that, a very small amount of that, was cars not giving space.
And they were told to do so. From what I understand.
And from team radio that I heard from Valtteri and from Seb,
that was not happening.
For those of you who don't know, a great tool if you are F1 fans is F1 TV's Pro membership. Again, not a sponsor at all. I do have it, and it's interesting for me, especially when we're recording this podcast, for me to go back in and listen to the team radios as things are going on. It's also very interesting to see everybody's view from the car, especially with incident number 1 today, which we'll get to, and will probably be majority of what we talk about. But it was interesting to hear Seb's frustration. And you can tell that he's a veteran racer because he's giving people space and still doing well for himself. And then you get someone who cuts in and then doesn't give space, like Daniel Kvyat, who
looks like he just just cut the corner and went off the track. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It was more than just exceeding track limits.
It was just absolutely ridiculous.
He didn't give space.
He only got 10-second penalty for it. It's just it's ridiculous. It really is.
So, yeah, and quite honestly, it was. And again, I have not had the time to go back and see if anybody has done any apologizing today. However,
yeah, he should have given space. There was no reason to. He should have backed off going around that corner. I would agree. I don't know if the race steward said so or not, but it looked like he well exceeded track limits. And I said, I just am not. The fact that he only got a 10-second penalty for that is absolutely ridiculous.
And the 10-second penalty came after a racing incident where he collided with Lance Stroll, and Lance Stroll ended up on literally resting on the halo.
Upside down.
Yes,
he's okay. Stroll's okay. Yes. Thank God. Given the numero uno incident that happened. But
and mind you, this is
what was that lap 3?
This was lap 3, so we had just come off of an hour-and-a-half red flag,
which
complete
is
stop of the
something
race.
I've never even seen before. And
so essentially, this was even though it was officially lap 3, it was lap 2 of the race.
Let me add this too: the fact I don't want to penalize the AlphaTauri driver because I feel like it. The reason why I'm saying it's ridiculous is because the fact that the race director and the race leadership, the point was made in the driver meeting that they need to back off and give space. And the race stewards were not going to be lenient about violations of this kind of stuff. And yet I think a 10-second penalty was beyond lenient to flip him over. I mean, just it makes me angry. But
Well, and part of the reason that I'm a little upset about all of this is going into, and this is my segue into incident number one. So, for those of you who have not seen, and if you're an F1 fan, I'm not sure how you haven't yet, but
that's what we referenced in the beginning with, yeah. Well, I think we've kind of alluded to
Romain
reference
Grosjean
several times.
had an incident today where coming through, I believe it was turn 3 into turn 4 in the straightaway between 4 and 5. There was an incident again with Lance Stroll where he was pushed far outside of track limits, and when re-entering the track, a lot of these cars had way too much front wing today. There was a lot of sparking going on in the front wings.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And between him and I believe it was Lando Norris, one of them had an issue.
Whatever happened, there debris was
debris
a
was
piece
shed
of
from the
debris
front of the car.
was released into the field, and Grosjean. Correct me if I'm wrong. From what I've been researching and you showed me and watching over and over again, because it's something that unfortunately you just can't stop wanting to see every angle of, and
it's
he
from
hit that piece of debris, which caused him to then lose control. Correct, as it looks like to me.
But
And then he
I do want to make a
smashed-
note, Matt.
What?
We're not watching this. A lot of the drivers said that it was insensitive for people to keep watching and replaying the crash over and over and over again. A lot of those people were doing it for entertainment purposes. I want to make it notated that we're looking at this over and over and over again, not because we think it's entertaining that the car crashed, because we're trying to understand how it happened.
Absolutely. This is not entertainment. This is not. I mean, that's why we said, that's why we wanted to make a note before we even started talking today, because it's not funny. It is not okay. We are beyond ecstatic that Rahman is okay and recovering right now, and remarkable for what happened and how violent the accident was.
But basically, yes, and
this is
I
not
apologize,
entertainment.
but
We are doing it to truly learn and understand, and me for one, because I missed it live, so I was trying to fully understand what happened. So absolutely good point. This is not for entertainment purposes at all.
This is us and me more or less explaining it to Matt of what happened. So from what I could see, there was debris that came up. I believe it was from Lance Stroll's car. Roman tried to avoid it, ended up in front of Daniel Kvyat, and ended up hopping over the top, lost all of his downforce, did not have room to correct, and very unfortunately drove at a very high rate of speed into one of the
careened into the wall.
It was
steel wall.
Yeah, and for those who did not see it, but who do know about racing, it was not a safer barrier. It was not. I'm not sure what the name of the barrier is.
That's the point I brought up, and you were explaining to me that it's because, I mean, and I was like, why is this barrier failed? My immediate reaction was, beyond the obvious, is this barrier failed? How could the FIA quote unquote certify this as okay?
Well, and
the
what
fact it's on a straightaway means,
right. But I want to make note. I do want to make note. This was a metal 3-ply steel barrier. It was not a safer barrier. It was not a concrete wall. It was not a wall with springs behind it. It was just a standard guardrail wall that you'd see along pretty much the side of any American or British highway.
It makes sense because FIA, or in general, expect people to crash almost head on into that wall. If anything, you'd be skating alongside of it. So
yeah, so
being
along a straightaway,
I'm sure we'll see regulations and updates to those straightaway walls potentially that next year, given the events today, right? I hope we would.
Well, and the race director himself said that this is something that they would have never expected to happen. You never expect a car to hit that guardrail, especially in the middle of a long straightaway, head on at high speed. It's something that you expect the car to hit the side of and slide along.
Yep.
But
the scary thing is that the monocoque, the monocoque, what's the other name? The life
They
or
they,
the
they call it either the savior pod or the life pod.
that's what I think of life pod. I like monocoque better, but it separated from the car. Like
Yeah, the
the
car
rest of
was
the car just
was
the front of the car was
legitimately.
gone. The front of the car was melted, disintegrated, destroyed. Got like you could see the rear of the car, but the monocoque just went through the wall. And I was of the crowd. Like there's the crowd, that the Halo doesn't look cool, like it looks terrible. And those who like Roman himself was not a fan of the Halo, and clearly now it is because it's basically saved his life, right?
Well,
I've always thought that it looked cool. So, but if
and
there is any good to come out of today, I think you know enhanced regulations and safety regulations. The heroes from the medical team that just
yes.
got to him quickly, helped him get out of that fireball after 28 seconds of being in it. I mean, I was telling you before, it's one thing for him to climb out of the burning car right after 28 seconds, but what if the medical personnel had not even been there? I mean, you said his visor melted, well, he couldn't even see.
Well, and something
So
too, I want to make note. Because we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're, in lack of a better term, we're excited. Not excited in a good way, but excited
yeah.
emotionally about this. The breakdown was, uh, Roman came across the track. Daniel Kvyat's front end clipped uh, Roman, and then Roman's car went off on the straightaway into the metal barrier, where the metal barrier wrapped around the halo of the car, which in essence would have decapitated him if it wasn't there. But then it
Mm-hmm.
also split, and they believe the impact with the metal barrier sliced through the fuel collector, which is about 3 to 5 liters of racing fuel, as well as the lithium battery. And if anybody knows about
And
lithium,
that combination is not good.
lithium in any kind of liquid usually causes a significant explosion and or sparks. So
And thus fire.
it was pretty much an instant fireball.
Yep.
So when we're talking about his melted visor that's
And
completely fogged
because he
over
was stuck in that fireball for 28 seconds.
for 28 seconds, he was engulfed in flames.
And it just
So
goes to show he walked away then. He got out of the car. And again, I say thank God the medical personnel were there for a number of reasons. But in my mind, I'm thinking his visor was probably melted, couldn't see. He got out. His hands were obviously burning, as were his feet, I think, as well. He sustained minor burns on his hands and feet, and is recovering again. Otherwise, okay. And had they not, you could see them visibly, like him climb out of the car, or what was left of the monocoque, or actually not the car anymore, right? The monocoque,
right.
and physically pull him away. And my worry was at that point too is what if they had not been there? He couldn't see where he was potentially going. Yeah, fine, go away from the heat, but what if they weren't there to pull him away? How much worse could his injuries, you know, have been? But the fact that the gloves they
Well, yeah.
wear, the helmets, the halo, the life pod. I mean, their suits. The fact that he sustained what he did after 28 seconds of what probably melted, like you said, melted his boots to the floor, melted his visor. That's just incredible. I mean, one of the good things, if any, can be said, I think, to come out of today is the need for the halo. Clearly, I mean, that
Yeah.
halo saved his life, and as Hamilton said, as if we needed a reminder of how dangerous this can be. Let today be one.
Well,
You
and
know,
yes. And I definitely, as you mentioned, I want to say that the RLR podcast driver of the day is Alan Vandermeer, who drives the medical car, and the
and upon
hero.
seeing the crash, sped up and just got there immediately. Oh God, what a
Well,
man!
and in addition to that, an absolutely incredible job by Dr. Ian Roberts, who jumped out of that car and immediately ran into the fireball to get Roman out of there. I think without
All the entire medical, I mean, driver of the day, but the heroes on the medical just goes to show that you might not, it's great when we don't need them, right? But we need them.
Absolutely. And
Dear God, do we need them?
well, and they had a busy day today because they had
Well,
an
first
hour
they
and
had that, yeah.
yeah. So lap one, a whole 17 seconds, I believe, into the race. And that was, we had Roman's crash, and then we had, after the hour and a half red flag, which was an immediate red flag, for obvious reasons. There was an instant fireball when he hit the
Uh-huh.
wall. And one of the things that I thought was interesting. I went back and I was listening to a lot of the team radios right after it had happened, right after they red flagged after turn 4 there, or turn 5, I believe. I was watching a lot of the in-car video and listening to the team radios to hear how each team and which drivers understood and were asking what happened.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't realize coming back around the track, you could see the fireball that had erupted from almost every car as it turned, I believe it's turn 6, that hairpin at the top of Bahrain. And they were coming back down the hill. And all you see are these 50, 60, 70-foot flames and all of this smoke. And a lot of the drivers who had already made it to turn 5 didn't know what happened.
Yep.
All they knew was that
they were well past it. I mean, they were well in front of it.
They were well past it. And the one thing that I noticed was as soon as every driver saw the fireball, they're like, is that a car? And then Team Radio was like, we'll get back to you on that. And
well, I mean, Leclerc on the radio said a number of expletives and said, "Is he okay?" Is like,
well,
exactly,
and he was looking. If you watch the replay, he was looking in his mirror when Roman hit the wall,
and he said the same thing. And all they could say was, "We'll get back to you," because frankly, nobody knew.
Well,
right?
and watching it
today,
live. I mean, for me, watching it live.
And then the race. What was that? What you were saying? Sorry.
Sorry. With me watching it live, I felt as soon as it happened. My grandpa is a very, I don't want to call him a stereotypical Italian guy, but he's a very stereotypical Italian guy. All I heard was, "Oh geez," and then silence, and I felt the blood leave I felt myself go cold. And I looked at my grandpa and I'm like, did we just watch someone die? Because that's what that felt like.
I think, and I'm lucky to not have had, gotten to experience that. I will count myself lucky. But for those listening, I had seen pictures and seen like the video and, up until Nick actually, before we hopped on here, showed me the legitimate like race footage from F1 TV Pro, and he couldn't see my reaction, but I think he heard it, right? And when I saw it, I grabbed my face with like, hands over my mouth and just, I think like, oh my God. And I'd already known what happened. I'd already seen pictures of him walking away, and it was still that shocking. So if that's any testament to what I could imagine it was like for you, Nick.
Well,
man.
And I just remember sitting there and, we're not even 4 turns through the first race. I'm sorry, not the first race, the first lap. And I remember I audibly gasped. I remember just the feeling of the blood leaving my face and looking over at my grandpa, and I don't know if I asked him, did we just watch someone die? Or if I just thought it in my head, but it's one of those things where like there was so much going on in my head at the time, I can't really remember. I do remember my grandmother walking back in from the kitchen and going, "Oh, how's the race going?" And we just sat there, like I just didn't respond. And I'm just watching, and I know it's protocol, but it's also, I should say, it's a well done protocol that they do not show the replay and they do not show what is happening until they know the driver is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was kind of good to see the immediate stoppage and all the drivers just slid onto a crawl. You know, I thought that was, I mean, like obviously normal, but like it was just cool to see just how much control, that there still is over, even though it doesn't look like it today, right? But there's still a lot of control and a lot of measures in place, much like that, for a myriad of reasons. And Haas Automotive, I mean, the team, the medical personnel, the other drivers, what risks they take. I mean, whether you like or don't FIA, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in place for a reason. And I think today affirmed that. And the steps that have been taken on, that the FIA has pushed forward, and all of the safety measures and the cars and again the medical personnel, it's something you don't often think about, at least in my opinion. And just well done to the FIA for the safety measures they tried to spur, the medical staff today and forever. I mean, it again, stuff you don't think about, and that's in place for a reason. And it's times like today that really show you why. And I'm glad they are. For whatever reason, all these measures are in place. They clearly serve a purpose. So it is nothing I ever thought I would see, and I hope I never see it again. Frankly, ever.
yeah,
Um,
it's
Beyond scary, and the fact that he walked away, got out of that monocoque. I wouldn't even say a car. And again, it's just amazing what Roshan walked away with after all that.
I will say, if that had happened 2 or 3 years ago, he would not have survived that crash.
Well, I would agree. I mean, the
Without a
Halo,
doubt.
I mean, frankly, it saved his. And I think another thought I just had in my head, and we probably should, we've been going on, I think, today, so maybe we should think about wrapping up here soon. But interesting thought I just had, Nick, and I think where everyone's so focused on, you know, the Halo saving his life, right, and the burn and the fire, but like I think the focus is on the fire and his injuries, right? But the impact, you know,
Well, and that's
you got to think like that's what as we all probably know, it's not the speed that kills you; it's the sudden stop. It's
and a
the
lot
impact.
of people brought that up. In fact,
I mean,
Dr.
I
Roberts
haven't
brought that
seen
up
that
today.
yet, but like the fact that he not only survived a 28-second inferno, but the impact of what must have been like 140 miles an hour. I mean,
It was a significant speed. It was well above 100 and it was well above 100 miles an hour. I would say it was probably about 120, 130 because he did hit the gravel before he hit the wall. So there was some energy, not a lot. There was some
but I
energy
mean,
absorption there,
okay,
but
but nonetheless, I mean, you think about the amount of energy, just kind of almost in a very short distance coming to a stop,
well,
whether or not there was even if there wasn't a fireball. I mean,
so
that's incredible in and of itself.
that's something that then maybe we should dig into in a later episode is just the safety behind these cars because he has was it the Hans device? There's
Mm-hmm.
the obviously the helmet, the halo,
Which
the
he wasn't in
monocoque.
favor of. He did not like, and I think he openly admitted that today. But until he wasn't a fan of it, and I think now he is, rightfully so.
Well, yeah.
It's needed. It is needed. Whether I think the cars look cooler with them. Frankly, I've always been of that camp. But
Well, and
whether or not you think that makes the cars look cool, dumber, or look worse or better, it doesn't matter anymore. As you said today, anyone who that debate should after today should be over. Doesn't matter what that makes the cars look like. It needs to be there. Period.
yeah, absolutely. So
It was a roll. You said it best. I mean, highs and lows and median. I mean, highs, lows, mid level. I mean, it was something else. And it was. Frankly, I don't know if I'm thankful to have not seen it live, or if I find myself wishing I had seen it live. I think I'm of the camp. Well, like I said, I was still as shocked as I was, and that knowing what was going to happen in the whole race. So
Well,
however
in
long.
the 20 minutes where we weren't getting updates, and nobody was getting updates, so I was in
Yeah.
the same boat as Lewis and Seb and everybody else who was constantly asking and looking at the screens down in the paddock. Nobody knew for a solid 20 minutes of that red flag what was going on, and then finally, the camera cut to Roman sitting in the front seat of the safety car or the medical car,
Mhm.
and I went, okay, I can talk again because I know that I didn't just watch someone die. And having the history of,
Well, Formula One or racing in general.
Formula One,
I mean,
racing
before, I
in
mean,
general.
safety measures. I mean, it's well known that back in the good old days, it was normal to lose F1 drivers throughout the season or racing, and rallying or what, like,
Well,
wasn't
I was about to say,
drivers.
even, I mean, look at Group B rally. I mean, that
Yeah,
was,
that's what I'm thinking of too. I mean, and there's a lot of safety measures in the various forms of motorsport for a reason, and they get better and better. I'd like to see some more come out of today, with maybe enhanced barriers on even on straightaways. Would be maybe a good thing to look at, just in case. But
and I understand that's expensive, but at the same time, you know, what's more expensive? I mean,
that or losing
you can't
someone.
put a price on a human life. So
Mm-hmm.
again,
It's
it'll be very interesting, and maybe this is something that we'll discuss next week when we know more. But what's going to happen with Haas? Because there's no way that Roman's going to be able to drive these last two races.
nope.
So
Well, I
who's
won't say
coming
no way,
in?
but probably not. If he had minor barriers, but I highly.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. But again, maybe close it this week.
yeah.
You know, just the most important thing is that Romain Grosjean is, for all intents and purposes, okay. He is recovering. He is still with us, and the injuries that he sustained in that horrific accident are frankly incredible. And thank the FIA, thank the medical team, the heroes on the medical team. I mean the drivers for the risk they take, all the team. I mean, even the we forget, like, even the pit crews, and everyone's frankly in danger in some way or another. Maybe not to the level, but thank you for those who keep putting on this sport and other racing sports. And we're just thankful that I think that Roman's okay and
And,
he's recovering and he will recover.
and besides the marshal who ran across the active racetrack, um,
Let's not get into that. That's just
beyond
ridiculous.
that, thank you to the marshals who were very quick to respond after having a car literally come through the guardrail at them, who then took
Mm-hmm.
2 steps back, but then immediately grabbed a fire extinguisher and ran towards that fire. Again, everybody,
Yep.
everybody today, the marshals, the medical car team especially, and
Everyone played their part,
everyone played their part. Everyone
and we
played it
thank them for it.
to a T. And yes, there's nothing that we can do but give them our thanks and their praise. So
Yep. And we'll see. We'll follow Roman's recovery, right? And we'll see what
absolutely.
happens as new things develop, both through the end of this season and into next one. So I think that's
Absolutely. So,
quite a lot for today.
yeah. So, with that, that's the checkered flag on this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please make sure to check out our social medias at Redline Resorts on all of our platforms. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any platform you can think of. We're at Redline Resorts. And you can also email us at podcast@redlineresorts.com. I'm Nick. That's Matt. See you next time.